was a quiet evening in Carrollton, Texas. Night where the suburbs sank into their usual stillness, broken only by the rustling of leaves or the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. For the Johnson family, it was just another uneventful weekday night. The couple, Sarah and Mark, had just put their children to bed and were settling into their nightly routines when the doorbell rang. At first, Sarah dismissed it. Nighttime visitors weren't common, but perhaps it was a neighbor in need of something. She glanced at Mark, who was already reaching for his phone to check the doorbell camera. But as the screen lit up, his casual demeanor turned into something sharper. "Sarah, you need to see this," he said, his voice unusually tense. Curiosity piqued. Sarah leaned over to look at the screen. The footage showed a figure standing at their doorstep. The person was cloaked in black, their face obscured by a grotesque devil mask, complete with glowing yellow eyes and large twisted horns. In their hands, they held a large sign, illuminated by the dim porch light. The sign read, "Revelation 20 to 1-15. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Is this some kind of Halloween prank?" she whispered, even though Halloween was far from the current date. Mark shook his head, his eyes fixed on the screen. "It's not Halloween, and this doesn't look like a prank." The figure stood motionless for several seconds before ringing the doorbell again. The sound echoed through the house, making Sarah's heart race. Mark's hand hovered over the microphone button on the app, but something stopped him. He wasn't sure engaging with the figure was the right choice. The person didn't wait for an answer. They knocked on the door twice deliberate, heavy knocks that seemed to reverberate inside the house. Then, without a word, the figure turned and walked toward the side of the house, disappearing from the doorbell camera's view. Mark quickly switched to the backyard camera feed, his pulse quickening. There, the figure reappeared, calmly walking down the driveway. They held the sign high, as if ensuring any camera or witness could read it. The masked individual paused, turned their head toward the house as though they knew they were being watched, and then, without haste, continued walking until they disappeared into the shadows. Sarah let out a shaky breath, realizing she'd been holding it. "Should we call the police?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark nodded. "Absolutely." The Carrollton Police Department arrived within minutes, their flashing lights illuminating the otherwise quiet street. Officers searched the area but found no trace of the mysterious figure. After reviewing the footage, the lead officer assured the Johnsons it was likely a one-off event, a bizarre prank meant to scare but not harm. "Stay alert," the officer advised, "and don't hesitate to call us if anything else happens." While the officer's words were meant to reassure, they did little to ease Sarah's anxiety. That night, she and Mark barely slept, their minds racing with questions. Who was behind the mask? What did the verse mean? And why had they chosen their house? The next day, Sarah couldn't shake the strange feeling that lingered in the house. Curiosity eventually got the better of her, and she decided to look up the Bible verse referenced on the sign. Revelation 20 to 1-15 painted a vivid picture of Judgment Day, a terrifying vision of the end of times where the wicked are cast into a lake of fire. The imagery was haunting, and the choice of verse only deepened the mystery. Why would someone reference this? Sarah wondered aloud. Mark, who had been quietly researching on his own, spoke up. "It's not just the verse, it's how they presented it, the mask, the timing, everything. It feels deliberate, like they're sending a message." Over the next few days, the Johnsons scoured local news and social media, hoping to find others who had experienced something similar. To their surprise, a few posts began popping up on community forums. Residents in nearby neighborhoods reported seeing the same figure, always late at night, always holding the same sign. Some had blurry images from their doorbell cameras, while others only had secondhand accounts from neighbors. Theories ranged from a deranged prankster to a member of a cult spreading a cryptic message. Then one night, at exactly 2 a.m., the Johnsons' doorbell rang again. This time, Mark and Sarah were more prepared. Mark turned off the lights and quietly moved to the screen with Sarah by his side. On the camera feed, the same figure stood there, But this time they held a new sign. It read, "Time is running out." Sarah's breath hitched as fear filled her eyes. The figure, after ringing the bell, looked directly into the camera and gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging them. Then, they quickly retreated into the darkness and vanished. "This isn't a prank," Mark said, his voice heavy with dread. "This is something else, something bigger." The Johnsons decided to warn their neighbors and share the footage as widely as possible. They involved local police and even hired a private investigator. But each time, the figure disappeared without a trace. One day, while poring over old newspapers, Sarah stumbled upon a story from the 1980s about a cult that prophesied the end of times and used Bible verses to warn the chosen ones. The cult's leader had been arrested, but their followers had mysteriously vanished. Could this be the same group? Or was someone else trying to resurrect their dark history? As the Johnsons continued their investigation, it became clear that something far deeper and more dangerous was at play. But they wouldn't know the full truth until the figure returned once more. This time, their message carried a new warning. Judgment is near. The mystery began to consume their nights, their lives, and their sense of reality. But the most terrifying thought of all, they weren't alone. This story doesn't end here. It's only the beginning.